Check. All right. Good evening, everyone. If you are here for registration information for your current ninth grader, you're in the right place. So we're here for the class of 2023, the current ninth graders, a small but mighty group, so we'll be able to answer any questions. So feel free, kind of, if we're going through to ask something, we'll have time for questions at the end as well. But they are registering for the 2020-21 school year, which is crazy. It seems like it goes so fast, and when we go in to start talking to the kids, it's like they're barely through one semester of ninth grade, and they have to be thinking about 10th grade already. So it's good to kind of be thinking ahead and starting to make those choices for next year, and we hope we can give you lots of good information today to be able to do that. My number and information email is up there, so if there are questions throughout this process, definitely feel free to reach out. One thing I'll say again and over, and I've kind of said to the kids when they receive things through class today, is if at any time you do want to sit down and do more of a 3-year plan, I had some of these out for the teachers. It's a planning document, and I know if all of you all of a sudden called and want to get in this week, that's probably not going to be able to happen, but if kids register after next week and even by, end of the month, beginning of March, if we sit down and need to tweak what they put in as course requests, we certainly could do that in the next couple weeks. It's nice for kids to be thinking ahead to, especially going into 10th grade, there's some more choices and options and things to be thinking about with both advanced placement and international baccalaureate and making some longer term decisions as they go through high school. So definitely feel free to reach out. Again, they're just making choices for 10th grade, so they have the next year in front of them for their course request. And if you haven't noticed, probably looking at the green sheet, you have that they have a lot more options in front of them as 10th graders, and that only opens up even more when they get into 11th and 12th grade. So a lot of fun, different classes that they can kind of choose from, different electives or different levels of classes in both the social studies, English, science, math areas as well. So kind of progression of things, if kids, if they didn't report to you last Wednesday, it would have been in their social studies class, we tried to have elective teachers go and give them snippets of a presentation of different elective classes. We feel like it's really important for students to kind of not just, a lot of them won't look in the book or won't go to look at it, so it's nice to kind of have some people up in front of them talking about the different options, so you can ask them about that. Again, lots of different courses that are available now, so it's good to kind of open their eyes and to see what's out there. Starting, tonight we have the presentation, and this will be videotaped, so thanks to ParkTV for being here and putting those online. And on the TV station for people who are not here to be able to view. And then starting next week, so we have no school Monday, and then starting on the 18th through Friday, I will see all the ninth graders in their English class. So they'll come out of English into the computer lab. We'll talk through a presentation similar to this, but obviously more geared towards the students, and then they'll be putting their course requests directly into PowerSchool. So it's a great way. If they were at our middle school last year, they did this as well, so they're kind of used to the system. There's screens that we get them ready for to be able to kind of jump in and put their course request in. Just as a review, I didn't have a lot of the handouts because all of this stuff is available online, and you may have seen it before. Obviously, as students come into ninth grade, they're given this information. So just a review of the graduation requirements. So it's 46 semester credits that are required. Students earn 1 credit per class per semester. Study halls do not earn them any credit. Any other academic class does. And so you'll notice now on PowerSchool, I believe if you've logged into that as parents or guardians, that kids actually have an official transcript now as ninth graders. So they have a GPA, they've started to accrue credits, so it's nice for them to kind of see that in black and white and know kind of what they're doing, and as they're moving forward, what they're gaining credits towards graduation and the 46 credits. So with both English and social studies, it's 8 credits or 4 years of each of those, and the curriculum is laid out in each of those different content areas based on the standards that the state of Minnesota puts forward, and so the teachers have to follow those and embed the different standards in those classes. There are options going into English, for example, honors English or regular English 10 going forward. In social studies, there are 2 different options at the advanced placement, AP level, world history, or AP European history. Oh shoot, would you mind opening? I'm worried the door is shut and now it's going to be locked, so thank you. And then they'll go on from there in 11th grade U.S. history and then their senior social studies options. In math and science, 6 credits is required, 3 full years of each of those. The majority of our students do that 4th year, and again, if they're going on to post-secondary education, having more math and science, the better, so they can be more prepared as they go into those higher level courses. And then in health and Phy-Ed, health, if you remember, looks like this. It's embedded over the 4 years, so they earn 0.25 of a credit per year. And by the time they get to their senior year, they also have a CPR certification. So the nice part is it's more developmental in nature in terms of what they're doing each year to be able to learn about different things with health and then be, with health and be able to get the curriculum in over the year. They're out of their social studies, English, and science class, typically a Monday through Thursday of a week, kind of fall, winter, spring over the course of the year. I jumped over, and I'll kind of go back to this because we were talking about math and science. With the pathway, this is an example of one of them in the core subject areas of English, social studies, math, and science. And they also, I know, have them in the business and technology classes and the fine arts areas. You can kind of see a progression of classes, and so this is kind of helpful if you aren't sure in terms of direction, where did my students start in 9th grade? What are they taking now? What's kind of the next level coming up? And then going into 11th and 12th grade. So these are all available on the website to take a look at. The other thing I know the teachers have all done, I just got an email last week with a Google Doc shared of all the different kids in geometry and what teachers are recommending, because that's kind of one of the bigger things in 9th grade. If they're doing okay, they typically would go on to advanced algebra. If they're struggling in geometry, then intermediate algebra might be that first step, and then they go into advanced algebra during their junior year to get that 6 credits or 3rd year of math. So teachers are talking to students kind of this week, and that would be kind of what I would direct you back to at this point if there are questions about placement. The tricky part in math, I know, is that sometimes if a teacher changes for 2nd semester, you can definitely go back to that 1st semester teacher to kind of ask a question or have the students stop in and kind of check in with them, before school starts in the morning or between classes to kind of quick check in if they're wondering about, hey, do you think I could handle in honors in this level, or which class should I be looking at next? All right, and so Phy-Ed, they either have completed that or possibly have it this semester. Same with the ICL class, they would have had that 1st semester or possibly have it 2nd semester now. And then fine arts, over the course of their 4 years here, they need 2 credits of fine arts, so anything music-based. Band, orchestra, choir. There's a couple other electives in the music area, or any of the fine arts classes you see on the sheet there. Photography opens up to them. There's the pottery, drawing and painting, mixed medium arts. There's some really fun different art classes that are available. And I know, just as a little plug, there's going to be an art show that's starting at City Hall that'll run, I think, all the way through, I think it's either Memorial Day or Labor Day, but some really neat artwork that the art teachers do a good job of changing pretty regularly up in our kind of display area, some of the student work that's there, and it's really neat to see what the students are doing in those classes. And then career and college readiness is that credit through advisory. Your students are participating in that monthly, and they're doing some college and career readiness material, maybe some goal setting things, some different things in that class. And then the remainder of the credits, the balance is 12 credits in different elective areas. I did add a slide that goes through the pathways. So this was something that grew out of, if you had older students, when we had kind of this academy structure, it grew into this career pathways. There are a few of those that your students may have taken as ninth graders, business innovations, for example, or the media arts class. And so some of the other ones within the pathway are all listed. There are all the classes in those different pathways. And so it doesn't mean students have to take them in that order. Those are just all the classes in that pathway that they have available to them if they're interested, in kind of that engineering and technology field or the law and public policy. What are some of the courses that they could take in those areas? And there are, I believe it's 9 that have articulated agreements at this point. So that means if your student takes them and gets at or above a certain grade level, and that's determined by the class and where it's articulated with, for example, if it's with MCTC, they can actually then set foot on MCTC's campus and get a credit that starts on their transcript there that they could then transfer. There's some of the programs, we now have a math class called Statway that kids can take as seniors has concurrent enrollment with Normandale. So if the students take that, they're actually getting a Normandale credit at the same time, which is nice. So it's kind of a stepping stone to be able to take some of those college level classes and expose them to some of what they could earn credit in towards college, which is nice. The official registration sheet is the green sheet that you have in front of you. So it's a 2-sided with students having their kind of core course choices on the front side. Again, semester 1, semester 2, you need to have a full year in each of those offerings, and the different choices are listed and laid out there. And then on the back side, with all the different electives, they're just broken down by content area. You in no way, like sometimes students will look at it and say, oh, I need to have something from each box. And it's like, no, you just need to have a total of 12 to 14 boxes checked. So from the front side, they would have 8. And then they would have an additional either, to get up to 14, they could have 4 to 6 additional classes. So if your student's taking music and world language, they would indicate those, and they would still have 2 more slots that they could fill in to be able to get to the point where they have a full schedule if that's what they would choose to do. They also could indicate, and it's actually by not putting it, they do not need to register for study halls. If students only put 12 course requests in, 2 study halls would be added automatically, 1 each semester. So that's not something they need to register for. It kind of happens automatically. So students can register for 12, 13, or 14 classes as going into 10th grade. If they register for 12, they would have a study hall each semester. If they register for 13, 1 study hall would be put in either first or second semester. Or if they register for 14, they would have a full load of classes. And that's different from 9th grade. If you had a student who didn't do a world language and a music and they had to have a study hall, that was kind of a forced thing that we do with 9th graders. In 10th grade, kids can self-select to have a full load of classes both semesters if they choose to do that. So just filling out that appropriately, getting their course choices in there. And then down on the bottom is, and actually on PowerSchool, they will be able to put in alternates. So if they have a full schedule and want to have alternate classes for whatever electives they chose, this is a great way to do that because it does show up for the counselors in the fall when we're doing the schedules and kind of working through any conflicts. It does have the alternates on PowerSchool that we can see. So if there's a conflict for whatever reason or an elective is full, we can slot that other second or third choice in there. It's always going to try the first level, the first choice first in terms of trying to register a course, but it just is nice to have those for us in case there's some changes that need to be made. And if after we get through the course registration or course request process, if there's courses that happen to close, for example, they just don't get enough enrollment in them, what we do is go to the students' alternates to plug in a course so we aren't having to chase down 30, 60 kids or whatever it is that if they decide to kind of close a section based on numbers. Sometimes there's just not enough. I know in the past couple of years in the music area, they've tried to run a musical theater writing and performance class, and there's been maybe 12 to 15 kids. So that's not enough to run it. So then we have to look at those kids' course requests and put in their alternates for them. So that's kind of how that happens with that alternate process. We'd also love to have parents or guardians sign off that you have had a conversation with your students about course requests. A lot of times, especially still as ninth graders, they're like, oh, well, can I still register if I don't have my parent's signature? And yes, we want them to still put course requests in. You will be able to see it live as we have it open on PowerSchool if you have access or your student shows you. And we'll leave it open up to a point, so if there's some slight tweaks, but then it'll be closed for students, and then they would have to kind of come through us to make any changes in their course request. Trying to think if there are a couple new courses just to kind of point out. DECA, if your student is interested in kind of business and marketing, that's to get kids kind of in that pipeline to go through kind of that business area and get involved in that, the club that does competitions. They're with the new fitness center that'll be opening. They're going to have an intro to strength training and an advanced strength training course. So it's a 1-semester course that students can do using the new facilities we'll have. I think I mentioned I talked about musical theater, but there also is a beat-making modern band class that the music department is going to try to run as well. So some different electives that are kind of put on there, some of the same things we've had for years that are proven and popular electives as well. This is what it kind of looks like for students going in. When they get in, they'll be able to just click on the pencil as we go through with them and enter their course requests in the different content areas as they go through, and we kind of walk them through the process. Especially as ninth graders, we want to make sure everything's accurate in there. It's less for us to have to kind of deal with on the back end, so we really make sure, have them raise their hand, have us come and check it before we get them to actually submit their registration. I'll have some of these available too for students because it's nice for them to kind of have a visual of what's required for graduation requirements. So as they're going through, they can kind of check off, especially now that they have potentially 6 or 7 credits that are completed. They can indicate that on this and kind of keep track if you have that kind of drawer or file at home where you put stuff, important papers for school, and they can be checking those off as they go through. This is another, and this is what I mentioned earlier, that kind of 4-year plan. This is what that sheet looks like, and I actually on the back side have it filled out with some potential pathways based on the different pathways that are available. So it's really nice for students to, and not that has to be, in stone, but at least they can kind of see what the progression or plan is for some of the courses. Nice for them to kind of be planful and know, especially for those that maybe didn't have a chance to do an elective as a ninth grader, if they did have a music and world language, they have that option to have electives kind of right here and what can fit in there in terms of kind of some other classes or options that they have available. A couple other things just for informational purposes. So Jenny Magdahl, who's the IB coordinator, there'll be the podcast posted on the high school website. And she also, I know it was on the letter that we sent out, she'll have some information sessions for students. She's done a good job kind of trying to say how, in terms of IB classes, how it's IB for all and trying to we're different from the middle school, having been there, if you've been around, that's a middle years program. And so they are doing things a little bit different. And at the high school, IB has always been thought of as this diploma program where we're trying to get more kids into those IB classes to kind of think about that as an option to kind of challenge themselves. And so there'll be more information. And if students are interested in attending one of those sessions, the dates were on that letter and are posted on the website as well. And then college and career readiness information is on the website. They actually, to just kind of as an FYI, because you have students who may be thinking about next summer getting a job, as we get job postings and things for summer programming at various colleges and universities, there's actually kind of a job posting board online, and we'll have a place then also in the hallway for students to kind of look at. But it's nice to kind of see the different programs that are coming up. A lot of those are things, though, that you can look on college websites as well to find if your students are interested in some of those different options out there. One of the things that I want to talk about, especially with you having a student who will be a sophomore and going into not only 10th, but 11th and 12th, if you are not familiar, post-secondary education options is something that's available to your student as a 10th grader. The difference in 10th grade is that it's called CTE, Career and Tech Ed. So what PSEO is taking classes at a local college or university to get college credit. You can do it as a 10th grader. However, it's not a college earning credit. If you take a class, it could still earn you high school credit for the elective, and they limit it. They really only let you take one class in first semester and then one class in second semester, just as kind of a taste, and they limit kind of the classes. When I've looked with students, there's a lot of health education, some business classes, kind of just depends on the school, and each school on there you can find on their website through the Minnesota Department of Ed post-secondary ed or post-secondary enrollment options. You can find the links there, or usually on the college's website you can find them as well. So they limit the courses that students can take. But then going into 10th grade or going into 11th grade, we will have more information and informational sessions. I know our current sophomore counselor just redid, and we'll have that uploaded on the website too, the PowerPoint and a great question and answer sheet about PSEO if it's something that your students might be interested in eventually. We will have in March as well some informational sessions that kids can come and sit in on and learn about. Again, even if they're not going to do it as a 10th grader, it might be nice if they're thinking about it later on that it's something they want to do. When students do this, they can either do it part-time or they can do it full-time, and if they're part-time, they end up working their high school schedule out around the PSEO classes that they get scheduled. So it's something that can work for students. You have to meet the college's entrance requirement for PSEO students, and so they have certain requirements at the different schools, so that's something just to be aware of, and they're a little more competitive or harder to get in as a junior versus a senior. They kind of change the levels of what's needed, and they have some testing requirements there as well to get in. They can either sometimes use a MAP test or standardized test score, or they have students take the AccuPlacer, and so that's something that would be discussed at those meetings to kind of get students interested and understand the process to take advantage of PSEO. Just as a point of reference, right now we have, I think, we just ran the numbers to it, probably over 50-some students in 11th and 12th grade that are doing PSEO, either part-time or full-time. So a number of students are taking advantage of that. A couple things since you're here, and this is a great time to be starting to think about this. We would always get questions like, and it's hard to offer like another college night or like kind of post-high school planning night, so we just kind of threw it in with registration. So I'll buzz through these things really quickly. It's just more meant to be informative for you as a parent of a 9th grader. Some of you maybe, by show of hands, how many of you had older students go through the high school? All right, lots of information right here as well. So it's great to be able to kind of, if you have friends who have had older students, to kind of get that collective wisdom from them as well. So just a couple things to be thinking about. Navient student is something that if your student had ICL in the first semester, I went over with them. I'll be doing it with the second semester ICL kids probably after we get through registration here. And it's getting them in the program, understanding what it's about, using it as a tool for college search, career information, and they have a place to do a resume, for example, on there, so a great program. There's a little bit of a issue with the logins because Naviance just changed the mass login feature that they had, so we're kind of trying to update that right now. So if students tried to log in, they might have difficulty, but we'll get that fixed for them. One of the things that students typically are pretty interested in, and I always like to share with parents, that's in Naviance, and this is based on St. Louis Park student data, are these scattergrams. So for each school, and I can't remember which one I pulled this off of, it's obviously one where we have a lot of applicants, but these scattergrams, you can pick the school, and I always use UMD as an example when I'm in the classroom. But what this shows is the average, so the ACT is on the bottom, and then GPA is along the left-hand side. And so this shows the average ACT, and then the average GPA for a student. Then all the green boxes are the accepted students, and then there's the deferred or denied, deferred accepted, denied, and deferred denied kind of diamonds and X's in here. So we talk about with students, what does it mean to be accepted? What happens when you're deferred? How can you be a student kind of down here and maybe still get accepted? And what it means, like, maybe you've kept a high GPA but aren't a very good test taker, and that could still get you in the door at a certain college. So it's really a good conversation starter with students to kind of look at. There are a lot of other programs that you can find online that have scattergrams in them as well, just for the population that goes there. CapEx is one of them. Literally, if you Googled scattergrams, you'd be able to find something on it. There's lots of different programs out there that have it, but it's good information to have you compare your student or themselves against other students and what that looks like in terms of admission kind of for later on. And kind of just to qualify that piece about admission, when we talk with students, we're always talking about post-high school plans. And when we talk about college, we're saying, at this point, some of you may be thinking a 4-year college, a 2-year college, a technical school, the military, work. There's all different types of options. So we want them just to be thinking about whatever it is that they're going to be doing after school, because they need to be doing something. And so it's hard. I don't want students to feel like the only option is a 4-year college. It's looking at all the different array of options and kind of keeping the door open to be able to have those opportunities available to you depending on what you decide to do. This is what, when we talk about the college piece, though, this is something that I'm not sure if it was one of the counselors got this graphic, but it kind of talks about different things that go into kind of looking at admission officers and their job, which has become very difficult, and it's gotten very competitive in the last few years. And certainly in the news hasn't helped with the breaking of kind of all these different scandals with ACT and people paying off people. It's going to be competitive no matter what to get into schools. And these are some of the things that they're going to be looking at. Being able to, I was talking to students this fall in the ICL class, and I had been out with some girlfriends, and we all have kind of, the age of kids where kids are going to college, starting to think about it. And one of the things that one of my girlfriends had said is, her son, who, and this is amazing because it's all digital tracking, right? Like if you start to, they will look at hits on websites and kind of watching that, but it's really about going to visit and looking at if you've been on a college campus, had contact with admissions, have talked to an admissions officer. So there's still that personal part of it. It really just, there's all these different pieces of the admissions game, and the more that you start to get to know and understand and talk to people kind of behind that. And when we have typically, it's really heavy in the fall, and then again in the spring, we have all kinds of admissions people coming to visit our school and meet with students. So take advantage of that. Have your students, maybe not this year, but next year as a junior, they can start to meet with people right here when they come and visit. It's really nice to be able to do that and just, be able to ask questions, be able to get out in the summers and go see. We have so many colleges and universities right here in our backyard to go see the difference in those schools. And I talk with students about who knows what the school is when you're going into downtown, like right down there, and they kind of are like, Dunwoody, and so they don't really know what that is. Well, go take a look at it. There's degrees you can get at Dunwoody and be out in 2 years and be making more than you would with a 4-year degree. So there are so many different things that are out there for kids to explore now, and just making sure they're kind of preparing themselves as they go forward in the process. There are some standardized tests that come up, and this is where, again, that choice, and if you're thinking of a 4-year college, making sure you kind of know when those tests are. typically the PSAT is taken in October of 10th and 11th grade. Only in the junior years when it counts for National Merit Scholarship competition. That is only the top 1% of kids in the nation that qualify for that. So we're not going to have, 100 National Merit Scholars from St. Louis Park. It's a very small number, but it's based on a threshold that those kids meet when they take the test as a junior. They test in critical reading, math, and writing. That's something that usually comes up. Kids can sign up once we get back to school in the fall. So if your students going into 10th grade would like to take it just as a practice in 10th grade, they certainly can do that. It's just signing up in the fall. Usually it's an online sign-up process for that. And then again, they can do that in their junior year. The ACT, we actually have it coming up for juniors in just a few weeks here. I think it's on the 27th. And that's, I'm not sure what'll happen when your kids are juniors, if we'll still be testing here at the high school on site. Students are given one opportunity to test, which is nice, for free. We pre-register them and get them all set. And now if you've kind of followed ACT, they are moving to where after the students have taken the test one time, they can then individually take separate sub-tests, which is nice. So they don't have to retake the whole test just to try to improve a sub-test. One of the, I don't know if I have them up there, reading, math, science, language, I'm not sure the fourth, and then they have an optional writing component that has been part of it. So that's something that typically students would have taken. It used to be June, kind of May or June of their junior year. Now it's kind of backing up. Kids take an April test, or we're doing it in February. So generally, the more you can kind of learn your junior year and take it, wait a little bit to take it kind of more towards the spring. But kids are wanting to try it earlier and have a chance to take it, and then maybe take a retest if they need to, or into their senior year they can take a retest as well. So this is a college admission test, again, something that a four-year college would want as a precursor to their admission process. ACT.org is the website that typically kids, if you're doing a Saturday testing, for example, would sign up through that ACT.org. And then SAT is done through the College Board. We don't offer those on site, but there are different test dates throughout the year, as well as something called SAT subject tests. So sometimes students will take subject tests if a college would require that. Some of the more higher level, more competitive schools would require that. We will be having the college fair Wednesday, March 11th, and the time slot is 9 to 10:30. We haven't yet kind of laid out when exactly ninth graders will come, but they'll be able to come for a part of that time. Usually it's a little less time than 10th graders, and then juniors get the most time. So it's great because there's probably 140 reps from various colleges across the country that come, and they can kind of walk around table to table and have a chance to kind of ask questions. We try to prime them with a little sheet that has questions because not all ninth graders are great at knowing what to ask. So it's a helpful way for them to kind of see what that is like and start that process if they're interested in it. And the career fair, I need to double check on this. It's typically been done during advisory. I believe that is the date, and it's a fun morning where we have all these different careers and different kind of areas come and set up tables, and kids again can kind of peruse through and be able to talk to different people in careers and see what it's all about, what kind of education they would need. So a great way to be thinking about the future just right here in the high school. If you are interested, I mentioned Kara Mueller's name before. There is a advisory board that helps with college and career readiness. So it's really nice. They've done a good job in kind of smoothing that pathway or creating a bigger pathway and connecting. If you watch the 6425 newsletter, there's always pictures in there of different field trips kids are going on and things. And a lot of that is through the business advisory board, where they are able to make these connections, get kids out in the workforce, seeing what different jobs are like. A lot of the different classes in the different content areas or elective areas are doing that now because it's so good for them to see how this relates, or they might have guest speakers come in. But if you have any talents or things that you want to kind of lend to the high school through this career advisory program, you certainly can do that, or reach out to myself or Kara Mueller, who can connect you. At this point, if there's questions, which there may be for everyone, I will try to take those and then repeat the questions so everybody can hear that, and then we can answer those for all. She's asking about the teams or kind of blocks. In 10th grade, what happens is it's still in 10th grade. And we do try to have some teaming, but it definitely is a little bit more scarce because kids are in such different levels of classes. I've heard them talk about for next year in terms of scheduling, they are trying to be more planful, that like a certain teacher would have more sections of a subject to make it easier to do some of that teaming, because it's really good for the support staff to be able to help manage students and be able to kind of have those meetings with teachers. So yes, there is still some element of it in 10th grade. They do not do it though in 11th and 12th grade as the students get into the upper grades. Changes of teachers at semester. So if they are in a block team, typically their teacher would not change again in the social studies, science, or English area. Math is the one that could change, just depending on who's teaching it, what classes they have, what class assignments they have, and if a student's electives change and they need to be in a different section. So that's still the one area that doesn't have the same teacher all year long. Oh, good question. She's asking about IB chemistry. So IB chemistry, it denotes on there that it's 3 semesters. So that's something that IB calls concurrency of learning. They want a class to be taught over 2 years. And with the IB program, if you're not as familiar with it, most of those classes are in 11th or 12th grade. IB chemistry is the one class that's out of sequence or out of that 11th and 12th grade year. So what happens is the students take the full year in 10th grade, and then they have the opportunity, if they choose to take the 3rd semester of it, they take that in their junior year along with whatever other science they take. So they're taking that, and so that first semester is pretty rigorous with that, where they'd have the beginning of their biology and that 3rd semester of chemistry. If this, and then what they would do is in the spring of that year, they would be taking the IB chemistry test, so the SL test that they would take. If students choose to take the IB chemistry but don't take that 3rd semester, they wouldn't be able to take the test, but it still will show on their transcript that they've had the IB chemistry, the 1-year class. And in talking to the teacher, basically one of the things is they have more, I'm trying to think if it's, I'm not going to remember. There's something different in terms of the chemistry that they'll get by taking the IB, that if your student wants a more rigorous option for chemistry and they don't want to do that 3rd semester, they would probably want to take the 1 year of the IB chemistry to have that, and not just take regular chemistry instead. So they would take the 1 year, but they can do that and not take the 3rd semester if they don't choose to do that, or if they don't have any plan to do IB later on. Yep, so she's asking about college credit, and that's, if you remember, kind of we've talked about in the past, advanced placement or international baccalaureate. Both of those types of courses have tests that you can take at the end of the either 1 year or 2 year of the class, and they're scored in such a way that if on the AP, if it's on a 1 to 5 basis, and typically if you earn a 3, 4, or 5, you earn some kind of college credit, but it's very dependent on the institution and their policies. An IB test is scored on a 1 to 7 basis, and usually a 4, 5, 6, or 7 may earn you some kind of college credit. So again, it's very dependent on, doing well in the class, so you do well on a test, that then you have the potential to earn some credit that way. Yeah. She's asking, how do kids decide between IB chemistry and IB physics? So the typical progression would be chemistry, biology, physics, if you were just taking regular classes. So if you're going to be an IB student and do the IB diploma, for example, most kids use the IB chemistry as their elective class. If they don't end up doing, there's 6 subject areas that they need to meet in IB for the diploma only. So this is what I'm talking about, the IB diploma. You have to have courses in 6 content areas, one of those being elective. So they use IB chemistry as their elective, and they still will they would typically take IB biology for 2 years, and then if it's a really strong science student, they might take IB physics in addition to that. Colleges would understand, looking at the transcript, if a student has a 2-year biology course, that they may not be able to fit in IB physics. And it really kind of depends what the student is kind of thinking about in terms of a major, whether or not they want to take that course, if they're really strong in the math and sciences to fit IB physics in as well, or regular physics. Yes, but I would say most would not do that pathway. They want to be age appropriate and grade appropriate with stay with IB chemistry as a 10th grader, and then the or take biology or IB biology as they go on into their junior year. Yeah, that answer. Yeah. Right. She's got to asking on those AP tests and IB tests, what do the numbers look like? How do our students do on those tests? And it's really interesting because over the past couple years in APES, for example, our kids continually tend to hit the national averages on those tests, surprisingly. But I always laugh because I say to kids in the class, like, if you aren't doing the reading notes and study guides, you're not going to do well on the test, and then you're never going to do well on the AP test because obviously everything builds, and they think they can just get through by reading the chapter and not doing any of the work, which is, that we all know that's not going to work out. With the social studies classes, I think it's a little bit different in terms of how they're taught. And we could definitely get that data for you, even if you want to send me an email, and I could follow up with the teachers, because from year to year, we get reports back from all the different subject areas and how the previous year did. So they would have that data over the last couple of years. I just don't know offhand, kind of in the social studies area, how our students have done. Generally, it's very different, I think, than the sciences in terms of AP, for example, how they are taught, and it's very linear in terms of learning about a number of different things in linear order. So sometimes kids just that's more typical in how they're taught and things, and then they have these DBQs, database questions that they're able to answer in an essay format on the test. So that's something that they have a way to show their knowledge to, if they're good writers and can assimilate all that information into a essay question at the on that test as well. But yeah, definitely email me and I could get that information if you're interested in. Yeah. For that, right. He's asking about what courses meet the requirement for fine arts, and thank you for that, because I'll follow up to double check, because with the state of Minnesota, it all has to do with teacher licensure and what is being taught in the class, and if it meets a certain level in terms of the arts requirement, and there has to be a couple different strands of things to be able to meet it built into the class. And those classes may not have that, but we can certainly double check and have the art department fine tune if need be on that list. Generally, all the other art classes do, even woodworking 1, I know they have made to count, but those other ones may not be approved courses for the fine arts, but we can double check that. At this point, I do not think those are, just based on what I know about the classes, but we'll double check that. Even just not advanced. Okay. If you want to send me an email, then I could certainly follow up specifically if your student's wondering about one of those courses. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Yes, he's asking about summer school. I do know the dates and kind of the format. With us getting out a little earlier in June, I think the kids are done on that Thursday, June 4th or 5th, whatever it is. Summer school is going to start the following Monday and run for 3 solid weeks, Monday through Friday. 9th graders would be able to complete 1 credit in the format that we've had. And so it would be typically, I think what they did last year is 8:30 to 11:30. I know there was question about possibly, it used to run 8 to 11 and 11:30 to 2:30, and they ran it for more weeks. The plan is to be done by the end of June, the 3 solid weeks, and not go into that week before the 4th of July. And so they're going to be only able to offer 1 course, 1 class that students can make up if they failed a required course in that summer school time frame. So there'll be more information coming. Omar Adams is the summer school administrator, and he and I have been talking, because I said, if you want people to get signed up, get the information out by like conferences, so then people have it right there and know the dates. It's always the tricky part is to find teachers who will commit to teaching summer school, when they aren't sure of their summer plans. So, yeah. Oh, yep, yeah. So summer school is only credit remediation if they have failed courses and required class needs to be repeated. It's not electives. There's no, if you are interested in that, looking at more enrichment opportunities, that's where going, that in the summertime, it's not part of the online learning where you can have it paid for if you're a supplemental student. If you do online courses, it's out of your own pocket to do those in the summer, but there are a lot of great programs. There's a lot of great things on college campuses that you can do as well, as opportunities even for credit in some cases. So, yeah. That was the one, and I'll jump back to, lose my little clicker here. The articulated college credit, if we went back to that pathways sheet, those are some of the classes that meet the requirements. Oops, here it is. That they have that articulated agreement available. So if students get a certain grade, at or above a certain grade, and then let's say they set foot on MCTC's campus and take a class there, then that class, that credit could go with them on a transcript somewhere else. You'd have the ability to transfer it. And that's what's a little tricky about it, because the way articulation is written is that you actually have to go to that school, take a class there, then to have that credit and take it with you somewhere else. Where concurrent, you're actually earning the credit, you're starting a transcript at those places. And we've heard that some of the schools are getting better about just having a transcript for you and you can have it. But the way the agreement is written is that you have to take a class on their campus to be able to get the credit. Yeah, she's asking, surprised that there's a option in the 10th grade with the world history and AP European history. They both meet the standards that need to be met with the social studies in 10th grade. So typically kids would choose one of those. The regular option, if they don't take the AP, is just world history. And then going into 11th grade, they take US history. And then in 12th grade, they have an option to do, go back to it on here. The kids should be hearing about this if they haven't in their social studies. There's a couple different social studies electives. There's an econ, world religions. I'm trying to think of, I don't deal with seniors so a lot, so I don't have to worry about the classes. But it's laid out. If you go on the website and there's a social studies pathways sheet, you could look through and see the different options for each grade level in the social studies area. Right, good question. She's asking, do they have to decide like now about IB and going that route? The biggest thing they need to think about if they are interested in that is taking that IB chemistry class. So that's the only thing going into 10th grade they need to be worried about for the IB diploma, because that would be, like I talked about earlier, that potential elective, or it could count as their science if they end up doing something else for their elective. So that's the biggest choice. And then it's nice because it buys them another year before going into their junior year and making the determination, am I going to take all these courses, or am I just going to, take what they call certificate courses, or picking and choosing AP and IB, taking some of each. Yeah, with math, though, there is a little level of, depending on, I think I had it in here, depending on where the kids are now, they need to be able to get through a certain level. And so talking to the current teacher, if they're a student in geometry, for example, they would be able to get through IB Math SL analysis year 2. And so they would meet a requirement in math for IB. So there definitely is a pathway that's there in math if that's what they choose to do and want to do the diploma. Yeah. Just make sure that that's one that they would be taking, because it kind of helps them have at least more options going into 11th. Yeah. Usually, like I know she's asking about if any of them have prerequisites or auditions, things like that. I know like for Echo On, for example, we just tell the kids, go ahead and register, because there'll be signs up and posters about that process and signing up for an interview slot. And the teachers always are looking at the list after course registration and the interview process to make sure they mesh. And so if a student interviews or decides not to take it, we would take it off and look at their alternates. If they do get into it, great. Mr. Schmitz, for example, if you have any music kids, like for band, typically that's a pretty clear cut, because 9th graders go from 9th grade band to symphonic, but some might be trying out for higher level music. And so we just tell them, sign up for what the regular level is. If you get into that higher level, we would do that. Is there another one that we would make that change? Does it say there is, media arts, I believe, is the prerequisite. So any of the prerequisites can be found in the online catalog, and take a look at the classes that the class list would have it posted there. Great. Well, thanks you guys so much. Sorry for my voice quality again. I'm going to be ready to take a breather from this. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out or have your students come and find me. But I'll be seeing them next week in the computer lab as well. Thank you.